Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me. So it's a cover-up, and the prince is involved.
In the past week, there has been a lot of news surrounding Prince Harry's now former charity, Sentebale. So despite the fact that it is still a rapidly developing story, I've had my finger on the pulse long enough, I think, to sink our teeth into this. Let's start off with a very quick background just to set the scene. Sentebale, as most of you already know, was founded by a very young Prince Harry and Prince Seeiso of Lesotho in 2006. And much like Invictus, this charity was initially set up and managed by the palace, all of which has presumably stopped when Prince Harry stepped down as a working royal in 2020. Hold on to this point because it does become very important. Fast forward to July 2023. When Johnny Hornby, who served on Sentebale's board for 11 years from March 2011 to July 2023, including a tenure as chair since 2018, quit. And Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who had previously served on the Sentebale board as a trustee from 2009 to 2015, was appointed as his replacement. By the way, Dr. Sophie Chandauka is the same woman who was involved in the incredibly awkward moment where Meghan was being her usual pushy, bossy self when she was trying to rearrange people for the photo op at the end of a charity polo match last year. This also had further repercussions beyond global humiliation for Meghan, but again, we'll get to that a little later. So, to cover all bases, let's start off with Prince Harry and the former trustees' version of what happened and what led to this whole fiasco. Exactly a week ago now, assuming I put this up on Monday, probably not, but what does it matter? On March 24th of this year, Prince Harry, along with co-founder Prince Seeiso and all 5 former trustees, announced their mass resignation from Sentebale.
At some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director.
I mean, what can I say other than
it's a dirty game?
According to unnamed sources, which is always the case with Meghan and Harry, isn't it?
The charity was plunged into chaos following Dr. Chandauka's arrival as she took a wrecking ball to the organization and decimated it beyond recognition.
Notice the vague allegations, not a lot of detail. You'll find that this is very common from the other side. Another source told The Times,
there was largely a feeling that the funds were only flowing one way, out. Those close to the situation say that money was spent on consultants at a cost of around £500,000, and while they waited for the investment in resources to pay off, the donations failed to come to fruition.
Just a quick sidebar, the 2024 financial reports for Sentebale aren't available yet, so we can't comment right now on the financial impact of Dr. Chandauka's leadership, but based on the filing dates of previous years, it doesn't look like it's due yet. It's not overdue, that's for sure, and so we'll just have to keep an eye out for when they are filed. So apparently a meeting was then convened with the board and Dr. Chandauka, where they basically told her it's either you or us.
The board was aghast when their efforts to remove Dr. Chandauka from her position resulted in her lodging a High Court claim against Sentebale earlier this month, and feared the mammoth cost of such action would prove its final nail in the coffin. As such, they decided to resign en masse, effectively negating the need for the claim to be pursued.
And so the High Court claim has been dropped. There is another complaint to the Charity Commission, which has been filed, and it has been verified by the Financial Times, who have seen the complaint, and that one is still pending. Then came the various written statements from Prince Harry and Prince Seeiso, from other trustees, and of course from Dr. Chandauka herself, from which we learned that she accused the board of racism, misogyny, bullying, and harassment. All the things that, ironically, Meghan and Harry have made a career complaining about. Then comes the Sky News interview, which was quite pivotal, at least to me, someone who's been following the story. Because when you read things, statements from Dr. Chandauka, statements from Prince Harry, it really does become a he said, she said competition. I researched her before the Sky News interview, so I knew that she was quite an impressive and formidable woman. Her CV is beyond impressive, but to see her in action only solidified that impression. She isn't some unknown, untested entity. Aside from serving on the board prior, as I mentioned, she is an incredibly well-educated lawyer and businesswoman with experiences leading strategy, legal, and operations functions for companies such as Morgan Stanley, Virgin Money, Baker McKenzie, and Meta. And if you have a look at her LinkedIn profile, which I took the liberty of doing, you notice that she doesn't seem to be someone who hops from one position to the other, because that can sometimes be a telltale sign of someone being problematic. You can see that she has spent years at Baker and McKenzie as a senior associate, 4.5 years as head of group treasury of the legal department at Virgin Money, 6 years at Morgan Stanley. You get the gist. And as if that wasn't all enough, she was also ranked on the Power list of 100 most influential Black Britons. Is it Britons or Britons?
Britons.
And in 2021, she was awarded an MBE for her extraordinary contribution to diversity in business. So you can see here, we're not dealing with a noob, basically. By her side was newly appointed Sentebale trustee Sir Ian Rawlinson, who also has a very impressive resume. He started off as an investment banker in London and South Africa before setting up his own firm in 2005, and thereafter assuming many positions on various charity boards in various capacities, including as a chair himself, a board director, charity trustee, and strategy advisor. So again, this is someone who clearly knows what he's talking about. So, how did Sophie go from being the glowing new appointee to enemy number one in the span of less than 2 years? I mentioned the charity's financial documents that I went through, so let's start off there. We know that Johnny Hornby resigned from the board as chair in July of 2023. Now, what we don't know is why. Was it voluntary or was it forced? Was he jumping ship or was he sinking the ship? What we do know is he did issue a glowing statement about his time at Sentebale upon his departure, but that could have been simple diplomacy. I've taken the liberty, as I mentioned, of going through the charity's financial documents for the last 10 years. Now look, I did accounting in high school, but that was the limit of it. I am no accountant. However, I know numbers, and I noticed a trend, being that since 2017, the charity's expenses have consistently been higher than its income, save for a few good years here, such as 2021, as you can see, where the difference is very small, and 2022, where the difference is drastic. Other than that, for 2023, expenditure is back to being higher, and as I said, it's a consistent trend. Now, this graph only dates back to 2019, but in the actual financial statements that have been filed, you can go all the way back and you can pinpoint the issue starting from 2017, which is probably coincidentally the same year that Harry and Meghan became engaged and their relationship was very serious. So for example, you can see here their total income in 2015 was 3.4 million. And their total expenditure was 3.2, so they're on the upside. In 2016, total income was 4.3 million, and total expenditure was still below that at 4.2, even though marginally so. But then when you hit 2017, their total income amounted to 3.5 million, while the expenses went up to 3.7. And this trend goes on at 2018. Total income of 3.5 yet again, with a total expenditure of 3.8. And then from 2019 onwards, we had a look from the graph.
I did a 7-year historical review of the financials. It was pretty obvious to me that we had lost quite a number of corporate sponsors. We'd lost some families, and we'd lost individuals who were donating to the organization.
Remember when I mentioned at the start of this video that, like Invictus, Sentebale was set up and managed by the palace.
And there was quite a significant correlation between the time the organization started to see a departure of sort of major organizations and Prince Harry's departure from the UK itself.
Harry's removal from the royal fold isn't the only reason that Dr. Sophie Chandauka believes the charity's performance started to decline. There is another important factor that plays into this.
Number one risk is
Brand.
the Duke of Sussex.
Yes.
And in an earlier interview that she gave the Financial Times, she elaborated and said, quote, "When you start to interview people, they're asking questions about, well, these mixed messages around the patron." Now, obviously, the usual suspects, the unnamed sources, have denied this to be the case and continue to point the finger at Dr. Chandauka. But Harry and Meghan, as ever, refused to comment on this interview. And for a couple who normally clap back at every little petty thing, I think their silence, they chose to be silent with the Vanity Fair article too, if you remember, speaks volumes. I mean, wait, forget Vanity Fair. Let's get something closer to home when it comes to this topic of charities in Africa. What about African parks? That whole scandal. Hush. Nothing. And she's not wrong in that Harry's brand is absolutely toxic. I mean, all you have to do is look around at the news and see how vastly disliked and unpopular Harry and Meghan both are. Some major organizations like Dior have taken active steps to distance themselves from the two. Now, that's not to say every single company or CEO feels the same way. I mean, look at Ted Sarandos coming out swinging because he's got a contract with them and it's in his best interest to make them look good. But when it comes to donors, donors don't make money off of you like Ted Sarandos is. They give you money. Another major issue that she and Ian point out is how the board was too afraid to have frank and open discussions with Prince Harry because he wasn't just any patron, he was a royal patron.
When you look at the board minutes, though, there is no discussion about what's happening with respect to some of our most significant funders. And then when you discuss with the senior executive team, the answer is it's really difficult to have this conversation because the instruction was it's an uncomfortable conversation to have with Prince Harry in the room.
Now, this is obviously problematic. As Sir Ian explains,
People will be worried about where is the directing mind. Is it the board of the charity? Or is it the patron?
and aside from this troubling lack of independence, the bad side effects of this deference that people seem to automatically have for royalty don't stop there.
Prince Harry decides on a specific occasion that he wants to appoint an individual to the board with immediate effect without having talked to me. It's not on the agenda. But this is what happens when the prince is in the room and no one has the courage to speak.
Now, look, I'm not going to pretend I've sat on boards and, I'm some experienced individual. Obviously, I'm not. But it's another case of you don't have to experience it to understand that it's wrong. You don't have to go commit a crime to understand that committing a crime is wrong, after all. Now, look, I don't want to start saying she's a lawyer. I'm a lawyer and people don't give me any credibility. I've got people calling me a liar and a fake in my comments all the time. You kind of, comes with the territory. But when I say given that she's a lawyer, I tend to give her more credibility. What I mean is, I don't doubt that she understands the consequences of putting out false statements publicly, especially against incredibly litigious people such as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Now, that's not necessarily the hallmark of a credible person. We know Meghan Markle has the audacity to do very much the same. But in Meghan's case, it's because she knows the royal family, they're just not going to respond. They're going to stick to their motto. They don't like to go to court. And so the risk there was low. I think we can all say that with Dr. Chandauka putting herself out there against Meghan and Harry, the risk of retaliation from them is immensely high. As I was doing my research, what emerged to me as a pivotal point where Dr. Sophie Chandauka and the former board clashed happened in late 2024, specifically in December of 2024, when Sentebale announced a strategic shift to anchor leadership from the UK to South Africa, which, by the way, is where Lesotho is.
But as you roll on to 2024, the issues in Southern Africa are actually quite different. And so our organization is really looking at those other elements in the ecosystem that affect the health and well-being of young people.
And what's not mentioned in Sky News is that she had told Financial Times that, quote, funders were asking for locally led initiatives. Now, what happened as a result of this decision was that it led to a series of resignations late last year, including the resignation of London-based CEO Richard Miller, who then handed over his post to Carmel Gaylord, the charity's country director for Lesotho, who took over as interim executive director in Johannesburg. Is that how you say it? Johannesburg?
Johannesburg.
Miller did say in his exit statement that it was, quote, the next logical step for Sentebale and that the time is right for the shift to local leadership. But again, I mean, maybe they're just pretty words. I think his resignation might point to the fact that, to him, it wasn't the direction he wanted to go. Which is fair enough. You know, when you have people based in the UK and then you want to move your operations to Africa, I can see why some people who are based in the UK might not want to proceed with that move because it would be quite disruptive to them. Doesn't always mean there's something shady going on and that's why they quit. And it could also be a simple matter of entrenchment.
I think what we had here was a board that had overstayed by even Charity Commission guidance. You're not supposed to be on a board for past 9 years. And there's a reason why you have term limits, because people begin to mark their own homework.
In all honesty, I personally arrived at the same conclusion during my research before this interview was even aired, because you get to a point where the puzzle pieces are all falling into place and they're forming a bigger, clearer picture. It seemed that the board, and you heard her, they were all there for way beyond the maximum terms that they should be according to charity guidelines. They all got comfortable, and change is not comfortable. And so I think what may have happened was Sophie comes in with these new ideas, as she explained, and people were very resistant. All right, so I mentioned that Meghan Markle's appalling behavior towards Dr. Chandauka at last year's polo match had further repercussions beyond the global humiliation that Meghan obviously suffered and tried to rectify by using Dr. Chandauka.
Prince Harry asked me to issue some sort of a statement in support of the Duchess, and I said I wouldn't, because we cannot be an extension of the Sussex.
What would have
PR
happened if you...
machine.
Second, we learned that the only reason Meghan Markle attended last year's charity polo match was because Netflix had decided to film it.
On the actual day, the Duchess decided to attend, but she told us she wasn't attending.
Such a humanitarian. But more to the point, good on Dr. Chandauka for standing her ground and refusing to be yet another mouthpiece, another puppet, another cog in the Sussex machine, as she calls it. Because she's right. She's not a Sussex spokesperson. Sentebale most certainly isn't. And if she starts issuing statements in defense of Meghan, where is the line going to be drawn? And more importantly, how will that affect Sentebale's reputation and therefore its favorability in the eyes of potential and even current donors?
It's a dirty game.
Dr. Chandauka then drops this accusation, which I initially found bewildering when I read it before she gave this interview. But much like everything else, once I heard her rationale, I started to see things from her point of view. I'm not necessarily saying what she's saying is correct, but it falls in line with what we already know of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's character.
Why on earth would he want a charity he founded in memory of his mother to fail?
To be honest, it's a last resort. Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organization, and this went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation.
So even though initially this whole thought of Harry trying to destroy his own charity seems ludicrous and far-fetched, when you pause and think about how he tried to destroy his own family, his flesh and blood, for not bending to Meghan Markle's will. If you remember, she wanted them to defend her, much in the same way that she wanted Sophie, or Dr. Chandauka, with all due respect, to defend her as well. Look at the parallels here. The royal family or the palace refused to defend her because, number one, they don't do that, never complain, never explain. But number two, the stories were not false for the most part. And then look at how Meghan and Harry reacted. So is it really far-fetched to think that Harry would try to destroy his own charity if he never even hesitated to do the same to his own family? We also get more insight, at least according to Dr. Chandauka's version, as to why her fundraising attempts were failing.
Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me.
It was all a concerted effort to get her out. So this is interesting to me because, number one, as I just explained, it does fall in line with Meghan and Harry's tactics. This is how they play. But secondly, it confirms, she's confirming here that yes, her fundraising efforts were failing. Now again, this is still in the hearsay phase of this all. We don't have evidence to back up anything. But Dr. Chandauka does say that she has the evidence. Just because we don't have access to it as the public, we're not entitled to it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So all I'm gonna say for now, we're gonna keep our finger on the pulse and follow this case as it progresses. Stay tuned.